I heard Cody was going to be here, so I had to be on time.
I'm
I feel
seeing
like
that.
I didn't even know 5 minutes ago. Check my schedule. Oh shit.
Oh, well, there goes that story.
That's all of us. So we are live. And for those of you who are not familiar, this is Run Wild with Us. Ask Us Anything. I'm Lisa Kastner. I am here this week with Ben White and Cody Cisco, two of our amazing, amazing editors. And we are here to answer any questions that you guys may have around. It could be anything. It can be publishing. It can be editing. It could be the craft of writing. It could be why the hell is Ben bald? I don't care. You can ask it. Doesn't mean you're going to get an answer, but you can ask it. So with that, I'm going to start off with asking. First, I'm going to ask Ben, how was your week and what has been going on?
It's been a pretty good week. Oh, halfway through the third I'm working on as an editor. Still got the other two pending, but the authors are going through those, so I'm kind of waiting on them. But then made it halfway through a novel called Far Out and sent it back to the author to follow my suggestions as I finished up the second half. And he already went through the first half, and so
Wow.
it's pretty close to polished, and just waiting on me to get through the second half. So we'll call that success. And then the short story anthology, we're looking for contracts to be signed and get those stories edited and put in the master manuscript for the anthologies. And so they're rolling along too.
And so, success. I got a note from Derek Weinstock that he just signed. So you're clear for that one.
Okay.
And Ben, Ben, fabulous. Cody, what have you been up to, young man? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm working through edits for a Running Wild manuscript that's very exciting, and that one's had a title change, so I'm not sure how I should yet refer to it, but it is. Yeah, I'm really excited about that one, and so we're hoping to finish up that in the next couple weeks or month or so.
And I know the author that you're referencing. I remember the first time I read his work and I was like, oh my God.
Intense.
Like, I'm so jealous he can actually, like, anyone actually can do this.
Yeah. So, and it's it's a story that takes place like over the summer, but it also takes place kind of years later in the aftermath. And I think that he's done that weaving back and forth between those two time periods really well.
Awesome.
So, yeah, I can't wait for that to come out. This week was kind of big. I've been producing some events for WeHo Reads, and we had one on just yesterday, Wednesday night. That was Poets Laureate across America. So it was 7 different Academy of American Poets fellows who sort of got a fellowship from the Academy and have been working with their local communities to sort of bring poetry to the people. And they shared some of their own work, but also some of the projects that they've been working on, like going into schools, going into prisons and working with incarcerated folks. And
wow.
It was just really inspiring to hear all of the ways they're engaging kind of with both people who want to write poetry and just regular people who maybe, could use poetry at that particular moment in their lives. There's another exciting thing. We're doing a photography contest for that series, and the deadline to enter is tonight at midnight. So if you're watching this, we're looking for photos that speak to the theme of creating joy in the midst of sorrow. And midnight is the deadline. There's a $250 cash prize, and the winner will have their photo displayed in the City of West Hollywood Library. And if we can get it into some local shops where people could buy prints of the photograph. And I will drop a link in the chat for people.
I was going to say, please, please, please post that link. That's fabulous. What a great contest.
Exciting, yeah.
Very cool. And you have been hyper. In case those who are watching aren't familiar, what is WeHo Read? Even though I think it might be self-explanatory, but still.
Yeah, it's a literary series run by the city of West Hollywood. It went virtual during the pandemic, and it's still virtual, though we'll bring it back next year for a couple in-person events. But it's really a showcase for poets, for journalists, for fiction authors, where they can meet and talk to and get to know the creatives.
Awesome. Yeah, and I've had the good fortune to actually attend a couple of the events, and they are absolutely fabulous. So if you guys see this, you don't have to be from West Hollywood, by the way, to attend. It's actually through Zoom, and it's a really, really cool way to get engaged in the artist community within West Hollywood, and actually even around West Hollywood. So definitely check it out.
Yeah, I think I probably helped broaden the appeal a bit beyond just the city in terms of who I went to attend and talk. Most of it sort of something more than last night was a lot about that. I'm not sure if I can post the link.
If you can't, email it to me because I can post it.
Okay.
And what I've been up to, I have like 3 books that are out to authors for their review, with some, high level comments. So I'm really, really looking forward to getting their revised versions back. I've been working really super actively. Thank you, Cody. Just got the text, got the email.
Wow.
I have also been really working heavily on, so we now have a director of marketing as well as our director of strategic licensing or head of strategic licensing. And we have been really working hard on how can we make sure that our stories are getting out there, that retailers are aware of it, booksellers are aware of it, every single book that we put out there. So I'm really excited at where we're going with it. And I think it's going to be really, really awesome. I also just started on working on what we're tentatively calling Cure 2. So the follow-up book to Cure. And that one is, I think I hope Ben will be happy because he's my editor.
Of course.
So it's actually, so my methodology is I actually develop an outline because I tend to switch points of view as well as timelines in my longer pieces. And so I can't do that without having some kind of outline. And boy, is this thing dense. So either A, this is going to end up being really long, or B, it may end up being 2 books. So we'll find out as I keep driving this thing forward. So we've already gotten a lot of fabulous questions. Celerino says, well, hello. Hello, how are you? Fabulous to see you. Lori Joseph asks, so funny. I was going to email you today, and then I decided I shouldn't waste your time. And then you popped up on my phone. So would RWP ever publish a photo book with descriptive verse? So that's a really interesting question. So our overall goal for both Running Wild and RIZE is to change the world through story. So because that is our overarching goal, right, our strategic objective, what that means is everything we publish has to have a story in it. So if the photos were associated with a narrative, meaning they actually told a story, or they were baked into a story, then we would seriously consider it. We actually were looking at, a gentleman had written a more of like an adult, not sexually adult, just an adult targeted.
A grown up.
A grown up. He had written a grown-up comic book and had sent it to us, and we thought, wow, this is pretty fabulous. Like we would really be interested in it. We just wanted to, have a conversation around what he felt, how he felt it would go in terms of editing and things like that. So yeah, we would absolutely consider it. So Caroline Shannon Davenport. Hey, Caroline, as always, fabulous to see you. She says, hey guys, great to see you. Lisa and Ben, love you to post this. What am I posting? Oh, the link. Okay, yes, I did. I posted the link so that you guys can go and check out the contest that Cody has going on right now this second. Okay, Brittany Bell Connolly says, hi. Hey, Brittany. Awesome to see you. Good evening. It's been a few weeks. Glad I made it tonight. We're glad you made it tonight, too. Feel free, again, ask us anything you want. We absolutely love people's questions. And honestly, it's a lot more fun when we get to be more interactive. I mean, if you even want to just ask us what we had for lunch, I'm okay with that too. We're pretty loosey goosey in terms of the questions that you can ask us. So while we're waiting for some new and inventive or exciting questions to come forward, I don't know, Ben or Cody, if you guys have any topics that you want us to cover or anything, any thoughts that you want to share?
I have a question for you, Lisa.
Oh,
go
okay.
ahead. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Well,
Go
I
ahead,
was
Cody.
wondering, you're talking about Cure 2 and it being like a big story, and just wondering your thoughts on kind of pushing against the idea you have around the word count that you want it to be, and when the story tries to push past that, like what do you do?
Oh my God, that is such a fabulous question. So I guess I should explain like how my gut is telling me this might end up being super long. When I went, so for my prep for when I'm about to start writing a first draft is I go back and I read the original story, meaning Cure
Mhm.
1. And then I go and I go back and look through some of the notes that I had made along the way because Cure is heavily in history. I just make
Okay.
a whole lot of crap up that's aligned to the history. Um, so actually, it'll be interesting to see who contacts me and asks me if something's real or not, because you might be surprised as to what stuff in that storyline is actually real. Anyway, so I then go and I look at my outline. And because so much of the story is aligned to true events in history, that's how I can tell that it's really going to be dense, if that makes sense. Because
Hmm.
the outline itself is like 10 pages long, and that's with like high level bullets.
Yeah.
um, Now that said, I'm usually targeting, I want to say between 80 and 100,000 words. I'm basing that on the fact that I leverage multiple points of view. Each point of view has its own has its own narrative, right? It has its own arc. And because they are all enmeshed in history, that means that I have to world build each one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So because I'm world building in Camden, New Jersey, which is the modern day, Sweden, so the Nordics, which is both present and past, and then in Cure 1, we actually also visit. Um, oh, what's the Zeus Mountain? Now I can't remember the name of it because my brain does that to me every once in a while. Anyway, we
Mount Olympus?
thank you, Mount Olympus. We actually do visit Mount Olympus because there's a history
Oh,
behind
cool.
Mount Olympus that some people may not be aware of. Um, so because I have to do all of that world building for each point of view, um, then that creates a much lengthier work. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how I decide, like, am I just gonna like condense it more, or am I gonna split it out? You know, that honestly, it's gonna end up being a looking at, okay, do I have a natural narrative in a briefer work, and can I justify taking what was originally intended to be like maybe the second half or the second third, or the last third, of the book, and using that to start the third in the
Mm-hmm.
series. And or if it doesn't make sense, right, then it's more of a, okay, um am I trying to do too much in 80 to
Mm-hmm.
100,000 words, right? um and then and I'm basing the 80 to 100,000 on typically what it would take to world build that this kind of a narrative. So everyone's going to
Mm-hmm.
be different. I actually just had a similar conversation with one of our memoir authors. He wrote a memoir that's currently at around I think like 90,000 words, which is very unusual, right? Because a memoir is typically a memoirs are typically a period in time of someone's life where certain things occurred that were like, changed their lives. And, oftentimes they will go back and reflect on or reference occurrences from their childhood, or, from their parents' childhoods, or whatever the case may be. But because we're typically really talking about, you know, uh, at the on the outside, maybe 10 years, if that, right? And that's kind of in all honesty, it's a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a stretch. You're only looking at 60 to thousand, maybe 80,000 words. And that's usually if it's got a lot of, also like a lot of world building. Like it's critical to that memoir that, it has a lot of description about flowers, or, uh, I don't know, there's a lot of traveling, or I don't know. I'm obviously now at this juncture making this up. So it's kind of looking at that and then figuring out from that what that balance is, and what seems right.
Mm-hmm.
George R.R. Martin would completely disagree with me, as would like Brandon Sanderson, because they were both known for having rather long works. So I don't know. Maybe I'll become the next George R.R. Martin. I have no idea. Highly unlikely, but but yeah, let's see. Um, Ben, do you want to go with what was your question?
Oh, I was just going to ask if anyone is familiar with Annie, I think it's Ernaux, Ernaux. She's a French writer
Ah,
and was named as the Nobel laureate today.
Yes, I saw that. She
Yeah.
sounds amazing.
But
I haven't read any of her works, but I'm intrigued.
Hmm.
yeah, they're on the way. I've got them ordered, but I don't have any either.
I want to
But
hear your thoughts on it, because yeah, she sounded really fascinating.
yeah, and she the write up was she mixes fiction with memoir, which is a great way to make a hybrid of both. I think
Mm-hmm.
to create fiction out of memoir and memoir out of fiction.
Yeah.
And who's to argue? But
And it's a good tactic if you want to keep them guessing, your readers.
yeah,
Right. I was gonna say, you want to keep them engaged. It's a great way to
And
get them to call you a lot.
and to not own up to the stuff you don't want to own up to, but
I'm down with that.
yes.
Like, oh yeah, no, that didn't really happen.
I was sitting down with an author friend Tuesday night, and she's working on her memoir, and it's in places it's sexually explicit. It's about kind of her awakening to her feelings of attraction to women and what that meant for her marriage to a man. And it just, I mean, the writing itself, I reviewed like 50 pages. The writing itself is really strong, but what was so strong is her like being willing to tell this story. It's like something that's like in the pretty recent past and was painful for all involved, and she's she's going with it to just be like, I got to tell this. So I to be an accountability buddy for her so that you can finish it and get it out into the world, because it's gonna rock.
Oh, I can't wait. That sounds fabulous. I mean, honestly, to me, I think that's what memoirs should do, is they should end up being a way that the reader not only can become, well, one, those who are in similar situations can feel like they have a buddy, right? Like there's someone else who understands what they've gone through, but
Right.
also to create an understanding, to create an empathy among those who are not in those situations, and who
Right.
maybe they don't know anyone. So I know this is a sarcastic question, but I'm going to ask it. Caroline says,
way.
"What did you have for lunch?" So answer the question. Actually, Cody, you answer it, and then Ben, you answer it, and then you say whatever the hell it was that you were going to say.
I had a Jersey torpedo sub sandwich for lunch.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing.
This filling is great. Yeah, right what I needed at the time.
Nice. How about you, Ben?
Oh, remember last week when we were talking red wine and I said I'm a tea drinker?
Mhm.
This week I have to admit that I only eat one meal a day and I don't eat lunch. So nothing, like always.
There you go. Well,
I
also
we're establishing my eating habits.
there you go. I also don't eat. I eat one real meal a day. At lunch, I have a protein shake, which is like a banana, some other fruit, actual protein powder, and then I mix it up like I blend it so it's more like ice cream. And that's my lunch. So anyway,
It's all about us.
so Ben, what were you gonna say?
Oh, it was just back to the memoir, and I think the key to the memoir, maybe any writing, is to present meaning in the writing. And even though a memoir may come across as being very personal, there's a wide range and the potential for it to have meaning for other people, even if it's not the same meaning. It may click in a memory of something similar that has a different meaning for someone else, and that's the value of that memoir. And it's funny we're talking about memoirs tonight, because you know me and my poemoirs, the genre that I created.
Yeah. Clearly, it was you.
Memoir in a poem form. Actually, tomorrow, Memoir University is calling to see if what I'm talking about would make a good class for their discussions on memoirs. So keep your fingers crossed, and hopefully I can hold a class on poemoirs and grow the genre.
Awesome.
That sounds awesome.
I've got it's another poemoir about Mill Springs, Kentucky, which is where my family lived when we came back from Alaska after 4 years when I was very young. But the poemoir itself the subtitle is a poemoir of place and people. So it's think about a memoir about a place and everything that has happened in that place. Maybe not the 10 years frame, but in this particular work, it goes back to the Civil War, where there was a battle of Mill Springs in Kentucky. It was one of the last of the very few that happened in Kentucky before Kentucky was a border state. But anyway,
Wow.
it's a matter of remembering what took place at that place, and how it would haunt the future, and the attitudes 100 years ago are still lingering around, because Kentucky doesn't change much too fast, but maybe no place does. So even a memoir of place has some meaning and some interest, maybe as a topic.
Very cool. All right. Caroline asks, are you cognizant in the back of your mind when you're writing the history truth? Ben, I'm going to let you take one first.
it's in the front of my mind. It's not in the back. It's it's I think it's steering. The again, it goes back to the human experience over time, and you look back at history, and history has changed, and the attitudes have changed. The morals are different morals now than they were in the past. So you have to be cognizant of that, and you can't judge yesterday by today, especially when yesterday was 100 years ago. But there are still some interesting actions that humans take that may be universal, no matter when it was. But so I think you start with it in the back of your mind, but I think it works its way up to where it makes it to the pen and out through the ink, and it's there and with you, and not just a guiding force, but up in the front seat steering.
How about you, Cody?
I write. Some of my books have been categorized as utopian, which is funny, but I don't really see them that way. But I do think a lot about conflict in society and the world that I've built in the books, different factions, how they interact, what they're trying to get from one another when they come into conflict. So all of that's usually like batting around in the back of my brain, and I'll write down notes and sort of build that bigger picture, that bigger tapestry. But it's always a question of like, when can this come into the story and the plot naturally? When does it serve the arc of the character to bring that into it? And most times, you're leaving like 80% of it out, but the part that you can bring in is the part that highlights what's at stake for the character, why they're caught in a mess. So, and I like that part of it. I love, in my imagination, living in this other little world for a while and imagining how things could be. And that there's a real thrill when I finally get to the point where I can bring something onto the page and bring it alive.
Wow, that's awesome. I think to piggyback on what both of your comments, I also, because I'm very aware when I'm writing history, but understand that I've probably done quite a bit of research on that time period to understand not just the facts, but the context that those facts occurred. Because like this morning I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about how this one king had basically arranged marriages for his children as early in life as like 13.
Wow.
Meaning they were married at like the age of 13, and actually started the discussions around the children being married at like 11. So, the way this podcaster was positioning it made it sound like, oh my God, that was so unusual. But I actually knew from doing previous research that this actually wasn't unusual. This was very common because it was all about building relationships and agreements across regions. And so it was very common. And I mean, I don't know if it still happens today, but for quite a long period of time, I mean, that is how different countries, ended wars. In some cases, was that they had those in power marry off their kids, and all of a sudden now they're besties, right? I mean, that's just sort of how it went down. So, I try to make sure that I have all that in my mind. I've done all that research so that as I'm writing within that world, what I'm writing, it aligns to and would be natural for that period in time. And I think both to Ben and Cody's points, if it's something that would be considered unusual, and if I'm writing it in a third person narrative, not first person, if I do it in third person, then I can add a little commentary so that the reader understands this is common, right? Versus if it's in first person, then that character would have no idea that this someone from our time period might find it unusual. So you don't really have a natural point to make any kind of reference. So
yeah, it's more difficult to work in that perspective. Definitely.
Although it can be more engaging to have the narrative in the first person, because you're pulled in not only by their voice, but you're pulled in by their perspective, because it feels more intimate, right? Or it can feel more intimate. So
yeah, and you're kind of I don't want to say trapped, but you're located within their truth. And if there's things that character doesn't know, it's hard to bring them into the story in a way that's
right, exactly.
It's an extra
And you
challenge.
can sneak stuff in by having the character have conversations with third parties who would have that perspective. They may have that understanding, right? But you just can't have that brought forward by them directly if it wouldn't. Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Lori Joseph asked, do any of you have a story that you will withhold until late in life?
Is this late in life already? It feels like it.
I know, right?
Define late in life.
Exactly. I'm like, Lori, you have no idea how old we are. Maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. I mean, in all honesty, so my MFA was focused on both fiction and nonfiction. And the nonfiction was at the insistence of the director of our program, because I had written a piece about my some of my childhood, and he called me the next Mary Carr. So like the opening line is, I died at the age of 9, not brain dead. That would have taken a few more minutes. So he just thought, which by the way is true. Anyway, so, but I've never, to me, the most effective memoirs have a natural arc to it. And mine has always felt like someone's just standing there blathering to you going, and. So until I can find whatever that arc is, I don't see a point in writing my memoir. So I don't know. What about you guys? Do you guys have any stories that you've pondered, but you haven't found a natural in way or structure to it?
Ben, you want to go first?
Yeah, I think what that question reminded me of was a poem I had written about a neighbor who was not necessarily friends with my mother, but coworker and acquaintance, and same neighborhood, and the differences between that family and our own family and the different circumstances. And my mother said, well, I like it, but don't ever publish it till I'm dead.
Okay.
And so sometimes those stories are to protect the others, not necessarily the innocent, but the ones whose real attitude isn't known. And so you're protecting the attitude of others. And so it's I think we may all have those, waiting for the right story to interweave them, or just pieces of that story to be interwoven in other characters, because we pick and choose what our characters know based on our experience. It's very hard not to do that. So it's a matter of protecting others, waiting for the clean slate to say, yeah, I can tell it now. Nobody's going to even know.
Okay. How about you, Cody?
I've written several pieces that are memoir that they don't yet hang together in like a cohesive arc. So they might be portions of several memoirs. And if they were all assembled and ready to go, and then I had to make a decision on, should I do it now or wait? That would be very difficult. The good news is I haven't had a lot of time to work on them lately, so I don't feel that pressure. Like, they'll come out when they have to come out, and I think especially with memoir, the benefit of time and distance is helpful, because you can feel one way going through something, and your later experiences will change your perspective, and I think that is one of the delicious flavors of memoir is the difference that time makes in terms of how you portray or take in those past events.
Wow, that's
yeah.
great. Yeah.
But everyone who's got stories in them, I mean, yes, definitely get started if it's motivating you to write, or if it's something you want to get down on paper just because, like, there's no worry about publication later. First, get it down.
Oh, I completely agree. I actually had a similar conversation with a memoirist where I'm like, this is your story. You need to decide what the theme is. You need to decide what you want it to be focused on, but you need it to be the best that it can be. Like, don't worry about timeline. Don't worry about deadline. Really focus on making this, the gorgeous piece that it can be. So,
yeah. And what Ben said earlier about the message, right? Like,
yeah,
making sure it's not just a series of stuff that happened, but like, what are you trying to say about it?
exactly.
The meaning in it, yeah. Message with a meaning, yeah.
Exactly. Brittany asks, what is your favorite mashup of genres? I'll be honest, I kind of love I love when people play. I think it's fun. So I love all kinds of mashups. I don't necessarily have a favorite per se. So as long as it's a great story, I'm pretty much down. So
Yeah.
And what do you think? Ben, what do you think?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily a mash of genres, but it's any story that has that genre in it, but underneath it is about relationships of the characters. And I was reminded of Shocking Pink, a novel we have coming out, that with the backdrop of the porn industry, and it's very well done. It's got enough humor in it to where it doesn't take itself too seriously about the porn industry or the the events happening with the characters. But at the end of the day, that whole novel is about people and the relationships they have and the attitudes they have towards each other. And it could have been reworded and reworked into having any industry backdrop. It just happened to be Shocking Pink, the porn industry. But at the end of the day, like I say, it was just about characters that were human and they had relationships. So I think that mix up of whatever the story is make the characters interesting. And if it's a love story behind a mystery or that kind of thing, make the characters real and make the relationships work.
Yeah, I think that's right. Genre is really like the ingredients in a recipe. Like you have all the different options you can bring into it, and what matters is how they come together and the the baking temperature, whatever how you want to extend that metaphor. So the more the merrier, as far as I'm convinced. Like I love elements of genre sort of butting up against each other, and stories that also kind of challenge the norms. Bringing in a genre norm, but then twisting it. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love a good mystery in any setting. It could be sci-fi, it could be like a literary mystery, like any. I love that feeling that the story is unfolding and I'm going to find out something at some point that is mysterious at the moment.
Oh yeah, definitely. So Caroline asks, how important do you all feel the past matters to the now? I'll start with Cody since I started with Ben last time.
Yeah, so I'm going to frame the question a little bit. Like if we're talking about writing a novel, say, how important is the past to what's happening in the novel. And I
Mhm.
think it's very helpful to have that, to have gone through the thought process of, okay, well, what happened before the first chapter? What is the backstory behind these characters? What, everything that came before. And you also have the option of bringing that in when you want. So you can have characters reminiscing, you can have them remembering key and pivotal moments in their lives later on. I think it's very important. Yeah.
How about you? What do you think, Ben?
Well, I think it's paraphrasing Faulkner, but I'm going to quote the New Orleans streetcar driver who said, "There's no past in New Orleans. It's all the same." And it's a great line to know that even though time passes and things do change, it's still because of the past. There's a cause and effect relationship between the past and the now, and I don't think you can just isolate and write the word right in the present tense without it being influenced by the past, whether as an author or the story you're telling. It's still going to rely maybe on your readers' experiences and say, well, they know what I'm talking about because it's happened before, or this situation has come up. But that the other quote that was, I think it was Einstein, said, the only reason for time is to keep everything from happening at once. And then I think he said, but it is happening at once. So it's everything is happening at once. So it's really, it's the world building, like Lisa's talking about. You need to build the world for the clarification of what's going on in the present based on what happened in the past. But that's just a technique and a tool that helps create the scene and the story and the flow of the story. So it's there. So the past is with us.
Yeah, I mean, everything that we focus on and we don't focus on influences us. Every decision we make and we don't make, every action we take and we don't take, right? That all builds who we are, and is the same is true for everyone around us. We can all be in the same room and looking at the same thing, and we're gonna all take away something different, because everything that has occurred within our lives up to that moment has influenced what we see, what we focus on, and how we interpret what's going on around us. So, and that's true for our characters as well. But what we're doing as writers is we're saying, within the context of this story, this is what you, the reader, needs to know and understand. This may not be what everything that this character may have, like, if this character was real, and sometimes they are real, what they would be thinking of and focused on throughout that period. Because think about it. I know myself, when I get up in the morning and I work out, I'm not just working out. I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of different things going on in my head, right?
Yes.
When you have an interaction, you have a natural response to the individual that it's typically multifaceted, right? It's not a reaction. It's how you are emotionally responding to it. It's how you are interpreting it. It may be how you are then like applying logic to whatever it is, and then it's how you're actually physically or verbally responding to whatever that engagement is. And while all that's going on, there's a shit ton going on around you, right? Because everybody in that same room, everybody in the world is having the exact same experience. But it's all very different and all incredibly varied, again, because everything that happens and that we do and do not focus on and make a decision on and do not and choose to ignore influences who and what we are and how we respond. So when you look at the world that way, it's kind of like, holy crap, really?
Yeah.
But it also makes you much more aware of, like, when someone responds in a way that you don't anticipate, that, you know, they've got a whole world going on in their head, and that we may not understand. And the same may be true for characters, but again, our job as writers is to provide some form of an interpretation at some point. Like to Cody's point, in a mystery, characters may do things that we don't understand. We know at some point, if it's relevant to the story, which it should be, because that's the whole point of the overall story, then we're going to find out what was that critical piece, or maybe we'll find out what was the impetus in the second or third book or whatever, right? So that was just an incredibly long, elongated, and complex answer to what is probably a very simple question. So if you fell asleep during it, I completely understand. It's not a big deal. Caroline had said, where is it? I'm worried the stories I've withheld are too late in life. I actually agree with Brittany's response. It's never too late. Yeah, I mean, as long any great story is absolutely, it's never too late, you know. So I completely agree.
And
Caroline,
oh,
go ahead, guys.
I was gonna say, even the act of writing it down, it changes your current life, right? Like writing down your stories from the past can change you now, which is, you know, really interesting, and maybe in unexpected ways.
Because it gives you a completely different perspective, right? Like you'll suddenly see things that you didn't think of previously.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
And well, I think it's a process of pulling that meaning out of the past, and sometimes that meaning's not ready to come yet, and you've got to wait until the right time, and to the right time, the WRITE time, but
the right time.
It took me a few to start writing about that experience, and and now 15 years after being retired from the Coast Guard, it's just now those stories are starting. It's their time, and I wouldn't have written the same thing immediately after. And another point is when you have an idea, look at it from different angles and write about it from those different angles, because it may have different meanings depending on your perspective that only time has given you and the maturity has given you to look back and say what that, I can remember what that meant then, or at least what I think it meant then, but what does it mean? Like Cody's saying, it changes you with perspective and maturity, and later in life. When you get later in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's actually really interesting when you talk to people that you grew up with about like different key moments, because what your takeaway was may not be anything similar at all to, you know, what their takeaway was.
Family histories are full of that.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
One of my best friends, and we're still really, really good friends today. Her mother weighed like 400 pounds, and growing up, like, and she's absolutely stunning. And she, my friend was, she was like a model and a singer and an actress, and I mean, just an absolutely amazing person. And I remember her going over their house, and she would be making her mother's like lunch or dinner, and it would be like, oh, her mom would be on Weight Watchers, but eating like 2 or 3 cans of tuna for like tuna salad. And I would, you know, which is like, oh my God, like how could anyone even ingest that much food, well, there was a point where all right, this is going to be such a TMI moment. So my mother had paranoid schizophrenia, and at one point, let's just say something rather dramatic had occurred, and so my mother ended up in an institution several times, but this was the first time that actually my friend's mother was aware of, and her mom called to talk to me and let me know that she was not going to allow my friend over our house anymore, because she was afraid that either her daughter would be injured or that I was also schizophrenic and it just hadn't come out yet. So, which obviously, clearly broke my heart in a million different ways. And when later in life, I want to say, oh gosh, maybe 8 years ago, she and I were talking about that time. She thought the reason her mother told her she wasn't allowed to come over to our house anymore was because my dad had complained. He would feed her, right? Like she would come over and we would hang out, and my dad, my father was basically the father to every kid in the neighborhood, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he would make us, like these, junk food meals of like, hot dogs and hamburgers and, all that kind of stuff. Cause we had like no money. She thought that my dad had complained and said, I don't want her coming over our house anymore because all she ever does is eat. Right. And because she was like, Lisa, I was starving. Like I literally was just, trying to find a place where I could go and eat. And I thought, I don't think she realizes that that was like an intentional thing on her mother's part. Because
Right.
if you think that comparison of how heavy her mother was to how hyper thin she was, right? Like that's not accidental, And when I explained to her why her mother had said, no, you're not allowed to see Lisa anymore, she was shocked, like she was surprised. And by the way, what ended up happening was, I think that that demand that she wasn't allowed to talk to me or see me anymore ended when one day we saw each other. I think it was in middle school, and she was like, I don't care, I'm coming over. And so she did, like, and her mom found out that she was sneaking over to our house like almost every day, and actually literally called me and said, look, I clearly can't control my own child, so I guess I'm gonna have to let you guys hang out, but just so but just know I've got my eye on you, kind of thing. So again, like you never know what was going on in someone's life and what the intentions were of individuals. Like you don't know until you actually have those open conversations. And even with that, I'm positive there's 100 other things that influence that period that we may never be aware of. So
fine. That's, and we may, like you say, we may never find out.
We are well, we only have like 5 minutes left, so guys, this has been amazing. You've asked a lot of great questions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to go ahead and toss in the chat. If you have questions and you're watching this in retrospect, so it's not Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time, it's all good, guys. Just go ahead, put it in the comments, because I actually check throughout the week, and I'll bring your questions forward. Yeah. I get pinged whenever we have an additional comment or question or anything on one of these sessions. So we love your questions. You guys are coming up with some really fantastic ones, and it's a lot of fun to get engaged with you guys every single week. Now I have no idea where Ben went. I'm guessing he had some kind of technical challenge, because that's highly unusual. Mystery. It's another mystery. something else we may never find out about. Lori Joseph asks, where can I locate the link? Oh, because you're on LinkedIn, and I'm betting that came up
Oh.
on. You know what? Let me do. Let me see. I'm gonna post it on my LinkedIn page.
Thank you. That's perfect.
Yeah, I will do that right now. I don't know, Cody. Any other like thoughts or any reminders you want to give people this week?
I haven't really. This has been a rough week. I haven't really thought that far forward. I am, one topic we might talk about next time is writing characters who are different from yourself or from different communities, and how we approach that, because it's come up in a couple different manuscripts that I've worked with our authors, and so it'd be interesting to hear the editors talk to each other, compare notes.
I think that's a
Nice
great
to
one.
meet you, Caroline. Thanks for joining us.
And Caroline, by the way, is one of our authors. I believe Ben was her editor, so that
Nice.
just speaks volumes as to Ben's ability to build relationships with his authors. So I just posted the link, Cody. I copied you on it, or So
Yeah.
if you want to add to that post, please feel free.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, so that's a great one. I think I need to get better at bringing forward. We've got 2 books, I think, coming out in November. I believe we have at least 2 books coming out in December. I'll bring forward those titles so you guys can go and check them out if you want.
That's awesome.
Yeah, 2 of them are actually anthologies, so which is always super fun. I love anthologies. And then 2 of them, yeah, totally. 2 of them are full-length novels, so I really hope you guys enjoy them. We've got 3 minutes left.
Oh, I have one thing.
Go. Sorry.
It's kind of early, but also late. We are figuring out our approach for Made in LA Volume 5. So,
cool.
Yeah, it's that time again. So we're opening for submissions most likely October 15th through the end of November. And I mean, I'm leaking a whole bunch of information now because we're just starting to talk about it, but we're trying to level up in terms of becoming a pay market versus a token pay market. And we're looking to build the editorial team a bit broader. So we've had a lot of success this year, and I'm looking forward to kind of scaling that up a bit.
You'll have to bring the links forward for submissions when you're ready.
I might be able to do that next week or the following. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And we actually are going to be doing our end of year assessment of submissions. So I believe that is the last week in October. So if you have submitted a long form, so whether it's a memoir, creative nonfiction, novel, we will be checking those out and then selecting what our next titles will be. And so you guys should be here probably, I'd say by the first week in November. If you get a rejection from us and it says, please feel free to resubmit, that's exactly what it means. All it means is that we probably are completely full for the next year or 2 in terms of our catalogs. And we're basically offering you to send it to us again. So, Ben, I don't know if you have any last words, anything that you want to cover or talk about.
Just make sure that you run outside and put money in the internet meter, or it'll be quick. But no, it's been a great discussion this week, and as always, we appreciate your questions. That makes it a lot more interactive and a lot more fun to hear from you. So thank you all.
Absolutely. And
Good to see
thank
you.
you to Cody and Ben. You guys, as always, are absolutely amazing. Thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Have a great one.